Hello everyone, welcome to another tutorial. In this video, we're going to learn everything about Microsoft Entra Domain Services. First of all, let's find out what Microsoft Entra Domain Services can do for you. With Microsoft Entra Domain Services, you get key features like domain join, group policy, LDAP, Kerberos, and NPLM authentications, all managed for you. So you do not have to worry about deploying or maintaining domain controllers in the cloud. It is fully integrated with your existing Microsoft Entra ID tenant, making it easy for users to sign into services and applications using their existing credentials. Also, one thing to note is that this is a standalone domain and it's a managed service provided by Microsoft Azure, and it has no relationship with your existing on-premise environment, although you can set up a forest trust within Microsoft Entra Domain Services to your on-premise Active Directory environment if that is something that you would like to do. Let's proceed with our tutorial. I'm going to take you to Azure portal and we're going to build Azure AD Domain Services or Microsoft Entra Domain Services. Okay, I have logged into portal.azure.com. Now I have the owner RBAC role on my Azure subscription, so I can pretty much do anything I want to. When you're trying to do this in your Azure environment, make sure that you at least have the contributor RBAC role in your Azure subscription. Now, after you've logged into portal.azure.com, go to the search bar up at the top and start typing the word domain space services. As you type the word, you will see Microsoft Entra Domain Services. Click on this feature and it will take you to this window. This is the very first time that I'm creating a Microsoft Entra Domain Service in this test environment, so I do not have any existing ones. I'm going to click Create Microsoft Entra Domain Services. This will take you through the steps that are required for you to successfully implement Microsoft Entra Domain Services. Now, under subscription, make sure that you select your correct subscription. In the resource group, I have created a dedicated resource group to store all the resources for this particular deployment. I recommend that you also do that to keep things clean. In here, I've got my existing .on Microsoft domain, which I'm going to keep as it is. But if you've got a custom domain in your Azure environment, which is most likely the case, you can use aadds.your domain name as the DNS domain. So in the future, if you want to direct traffic to your Entra ID domain services over the public internet, you have the ability to do so by adding a record to the public DNS registry of your domain. Unfortunately, you cannot do that with the onmicrosoft.com domain because it is owned by Microsoft, but it is what I'm going to use in this tutorial. But for example, let's say that you own the domain abc.com. What you can do here is you can put AADDS, that stands for Azure Active Directory Domain Services .abc.com. Therefore, this will be your DNS name for the Entra ID managed domain service. And this is a perfectly routable domain. So if you want to route traffic to this domain over the internet, such as secure LDAP, you can certainly do that. But let me just get rid of that. I'm just going to use the existing default domain for this tutorial. Now the region, make sure that you select the appropriate region. There are 3 SKUs. I will put the Microsoft link in the description box below, which will explain the difference between the standard, enterprise, and premium. I'm going to go with enterprise SKU for this tutorial. I'm going to go next. And with networking, you're going to need a network with a special address space for this deployment. As you can see in here, it needs to be within these address spaces. Since this is a test environment, I'm going to go ahead and create a new VNet, which is called AADDS VNet in the address space of 10.0.0.0/8. If I click on create new, it's going to give me the necessary options to update the address space. If you want to update it or if you want to update the name, you're welcome to do so. So I'm just going to click OK. I'm going to go with the default setup for the virtual network as suggested by Microsoft Azure. NSG group or network security group will automatically be created during this process, which I will explain to you once it's done. So I'm going to go next. Now, this is the stage where you define who can administer this service. Now, all global administrators of Microsoft Entra ID directory and the members of AD DC administrators group. This is a custom group that gets created during the process. So if you want somebody to manage this service for you, you can add them to this this group, AD DC administrators group. It's a security group in Azure AD. By default, all global administrators are also included. So I'm just going to leave the default settings as it is, but if you want to read more about this, you can just click on this arrow icon and read these documentations on these links below. So let's go next. Now in here, as I mentioned earlier, your Entra ID user accounts or user objects will be synchronized across to Microsoft Entra Domain Services. So those users will exist in this new managed Entra ID domain as well. Now synchronization type is all. You can select a group of users if you want to filter them, but I'm just going to leave it at all. And this doesn't really matter. Cloud only means if you've got an environment where you have an active directory syncing over to your Microsoft 365 environment, you can sync your cloud identities only without syncing the on-prem user objects. But I have a cloud native test environment, which means I don't have any on-prem resources. So for me, it doesn't matter whether I select all or cloud only. I am a cloud only tenant anyway. But as I mentioned earlier, if you do have a hybrid environment, you may choose to sync only cloud only user objects. That's up to you. So let me just switch it back to the default setting, and we're going to go next. Now, these are the security settings that are recommended by Microsoft. Obviously, TLS 1.2 is enabled. So TLS 1.0, 1.1, they're not so secure anymore in 2025. So that's why Microsoft recommends you leave TLS 1.2 enabled as the only mode. Now, for some of you, depending on your requirements, you may have to enable certain settings here. So just go through these settings and enable them if required for your particular deployment. I'm just going to leave the default settings as it is for now, and I'm going to go next. And then next again, I don't have any tags, and then it's going to go through a validation process, and it's going to validate all of our settings. Once it has done that, what I'm going to do is go ahead and click create button, and there's a warning that's coming here. After you've implemented these resources, you cannot change the DNS name. You cannot change the subscription, resource group, virtual network, or subnet, which is fine. But when you're deploying this in a production environment, make sure that you plan this carefully so not to affect any existing resources in your Azure environment. I'm going to click OK, and the initialization of the deployment has started now. And this process can actually take a while, around 10 to 15 minutes, maybe even half an hour, depending on your region. So what I'm going to do is I am going to pause this video once Azure Active Directory Domain Services is up and running. We will proceed with the rest of the tutorial. Okay, so Microsoft Entra Domain Services Managed Domain has been implemented successfully. As you can see here, I'm going to go ahead and click on our Managed Domain. And when you click it for the first time, you're going to see something similar. Obviously, you will see your DNS name of the Managed Domain up in here. And you're going to see configuration issues of your Managed Domain detected. This message is expected. It is basically asking you to set up a specific DNS server for this managed domain. So I'm going to click on it and we're going to go ahead and fix this issue. Click run and it's going to diagnose the issue. So it's going to tell me the DNS record. So it needs to be a specific IP address. So the DNS has to be set to this specific IP address. So I'm just going to click fix and it's going to automatically go ahead and change the DNS servers from Azure managed, which is the default, to these specific DNS servers on these IPs. So I'm going to click fix and it's going to update the virtual network that this managed domain is deployed to reflect the correct DNS server. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to click run again and we will see if the warning has gone away. It can take a while for this to update. So let me just click refresh and see if the error is still there. Let's go back. Let's click run. Okay, so what I'm going to do, updated. Yes, it has already been updated. It looks like there's a slight delay with the managed domain updating. Let me just refresh the page and that error message or the warning should disappear. It's loading now. So the status of the managed domain, it's running successfully, but it's still saying that the configuration issues have been detected. Let's go back and let's run this service again. Okay, so it needs to be 10.2 IPs. I believe in the first instance, it just updated it to 10.0.0.4. So I'm going to click fix again, and hopefully this time the DNS servers of the VNet will be updated successfully to 10.0.0.4 and 10.0.0.5. As you can see, all have got green ticks next to them, so which means we're good to go. And if I actually go to the VNet and check the DNS servers, it will be set to 10.0.0.4 and 10.0.0.5. So make sure you guys run the fix to update the DNS servers. It's a mandatory requirement for your managed domain. So let me go back to our managed domain. I'm going to click on that domain DNS name again. As you can see, the warning message or the error message has disappeared now. And in here, as I mentioned earlier, if you want to create a trust between your on-premise Active Directory and Azure Managed Domain or Entra ID Domain Services, you can click this button and go through the setup. Typically, you would need a site-to-site VPN between Azure and your on-premise Active Directory network for this to be configured successfully. If you've got any questions around this, you can put it in the YouTube comments below and I'll answer it to the best of my ability. And if you want to change this queue, you can click on choose queue and change this queue as well. Now, I just want to show you this option here, Secure LDAP. Now, it's disabled by default, but if you need to enable secure LDAP, you can enable it over here as well. If you need LDAP access over the internet, which is the only reason why you would need to enable secure LDAP technically, if you've got a site-to-site VPN, your LDAP traffic is encrypted anyway, so you do not need to implement secure LDAP. But if you need connectivity to your managed domain in Azure over the public internet, LDAP's traffic is not encrypted. Therefore, you need to encrypt it using TLS/SSL. So you will be needing to deploy a certificate from a public certificate authority and deploy the certificate to your endpoints as well for the secure LDAP process to work successfully. There's documentation in Microsoft website on how you can configure secure LDAP if that's something that you are interested in. So that's pretty much it for the implementation side of Azure Domain Services. Now in here, you will be able to see the operation status. I can see a couple of failed ones, but these will come back up automatically once you change the DNS servers on the VNet that the managed domain is running, and you can come back here to figure out if you've got any issues that you want to troubleshoot. But for now, we can just ignore these errors because we have just basically built this, and they're probably updating in the back end with our DNS change, and everything is running as expected. And if you click view health, it will give you. Now, one thing that you need to remember to do is to reset the password of your user. So this is a manual process. You need to inform your end users to reset their Microsoft 365 or Azure AD account password, so their user accounts or user objects are synced across to the Microsoft Entra Domain Services or the managed domain, so they can use Microsoft Entra Domain Services or applications that rely on Microsoft Entra Domain Services. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I am going to go ahead and create a virtual machine that we will use as a management server. So I can show you from an OS point of view, we will install server admin tools on this VM, and I can show you how you can, create, manage organizational units within the managed domain. So let me go back to Azure and click on virtual machines. In here, I'm going to click create Azure virtual machine. And I'm just going to put it in the same resource group, virtual machine. I'm going to call it management server. I do not need any availability zones. I'm just going to leave it as it is. Image, I'm just going to use Server 2022 Azure Edition. Size, I'm happy with the current selection. Password for this. Okay, I'm going to allow RDP over the internet for this virtual machine so I can connect to it remotely, but I'm going to restrict this to my source IPs, so it's a secure setup. I'll do that once the virtual machine is created. So I'm just going to go next. Let me change it to standard SSD for cost-saving purposes. Next, and I'm going to put it in the same subnet so that I can put this virtual that is being used by managed domain or Entra ID Domain Services. It is not recommended. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go to address spaces. Let me just put a different address space in here, first of all, so I can use it in my virtual machine deployment. Okay, I'm going to save that, and I am going to go ahead. I'm going to keep and change the subnet name as well. And address space. It should come up with the new address space that I've just refreshed it. Let's create. Okay, there we go. The new subnet from the address space that we just created has come through. It's 10.0.1.0/24, which is great. And I'm just going to click add. And we have named the subnet default. So this is the subnet where we will add our management server to. Okay, so let me just go back and I will select the default subnet in here. Public IP, I'm happy with the name. Network security group. So what we're going to do is we're going to just create a basic network security group that's attached to the network card of the Azure virtual machine, this management server, and we're allowing RDP over the internet using port 3389, the default port. As I said, I will restrict the traffic just to my source IP address. I'm going to take this, so delete public IP and NIC when VM is deleted. Let's go next. I'm just going to leave these as default. I'm going to disable boot diagnostics, review, and create. And let's go ahead and click create. So this is going to be our management server. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to our domain, the managed domain in Azure, while the virtual machine is being deployed. Yep, that's been services. So I just wanted to quickly show you the NSG that's used by the managed domain. Don't believe I can exit from here. Let's go to virtual networks. And if I go to subnets, this is the an NSG has been created automatically. This gets created during the process. Do not mess around with these two custom rules. They're required by design. You can disable allow RD. This is not really required. Obviously, the source has been set to corporate network. You can disable this or even delete this allow RD, rule number 201. But make sure that you do not do any more changes to this NSG. The allow SP remoting, this one is necessary for the managed domain services to work successfully. So make sure that you don't mess around with the inbound and outbound rules of this VNet that gets created during the process of creating Azure Active Directory domain services. Okay, I think I got a notification. It looks like the virtual machine is ready to go. Let me just go back. Okay, perfect. So what I'm going to do is I am going to, first of all, restrict RDP to my source IP address, right? So put my source IP in there. RDP connections, inbound RDP connections will only work from my source IP DP file, and we will remote into our management server. Okay, so what we need to do is we need server to our managed domain. So I'm going to type sysdm.cpl and ported, but the resolution is a little bit messed up, so bear with me. So by default, it's in a work group, so we're going to change that. And I'm going to select the domain. So the domain is lessonzilla.microsoft.com. In this case, I'm just going to go there to make sure that it is the correct domain. Yep, that's the one. So let me just copy that, and then we'll just come back here and paste it and click OK. And in here, you will be prompted to put the credentials of either your global administrator's account or the person who is responsible for managing your Entra ID Domain Services. Now, this person has to be a member of the AADDC Azure AD Security Group, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and put the global administrator credentials here and click OK. Okay, so I have now entered my global administrator user credentials. And I'm going to go and click OK. As you can see here, we have successfully connected our server to the Azure managed domain. The next thing to do is to install RSAT tools. Now, before I go into that stage, remember that you need to reset your global administrator's password in order to do this task that I've just shown you. And you may have to wait up to 24 hours for the user object to sync with the Azure AD managed domain or Entra ID Domain Services. So I'm just going to click OK. And we're going to go ahead and restart the computer or the server. and let me click restart now. Once it comes back up, I will show you how you can install RSAT or remote server administration tools. Okay, now the device has been restarted. This is our management server that we're going to install RSAT tools. Now I've logged back in using my local administrator account. As you can see here, it's called the test admin account. But in order to make use of RSAT tools, now that we have domain joined the device, we need to make sure that we log in using a domain account, domain administrator account. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to go ahead and make sure that the account that I used to connect this device to the Azure managed domain is included in the RDP allowed list, so I can remote in using a domain account. So let me just go to remote desktop settings and then click select users who can remotely access this PC. So as you can see, the test admin, which is the local administrator user account that got created at the time of creating this virtual machine, that's got access by default. So all local administrators get access by default. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this account, the global administrator account in Azure AD that I use to connect this virtual machine or server to the Azure managed domain. So let me just put that information in. I'm gonna search by the user. I'm gonna click check names button, and in here I'm gonna have to enter the details again. I'm gonna click OK to select the user account, and then click OK, and then click OK once again. So I'm doing this once again so I can connect using RDP to this server using a domain account, so I can make use of the remote administration server tools. So let's go ahead and sign out, and I'll sign back again using the domain account. Okay, now I have logged back into our management server using our domain admin account. Now if I go to start and click on the account, you will see that it's saying admin Lessonzilla, which is our domain account, domain admin account that we've used to domain join this management server. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to show you how you can install RSAT tools. So go to Server Manager. Just so that you guys know, I have already gone ahead and installed RSAT tools to save time, but I'll show you how you can install RSAT tools. So once you're in Server Manager, click on Manage, click Add Roles and Features, and then what you need to do is go Next from the default page. Make sure role-based or feature-based installation is selected. Go Next. Your server will be selected by default, so click Next and click Next again until you get to Features, and when you're in Features window, scroll down until you see Remote Server Administration Tools. So make sure you select Remote Server Administration Tools, make sure there's a tick against it after you've selected. Go Next and click Install. This can take a couple of minutes for the installation. Once that's done, you will be able to use Remote Server Administration Tools. So in order to use Remote Server Administration Tools, click on the Start button and click on Windows Administrative Tools. In here, you'll see all the typical options that you find in active on-prem Active Directory servers. So let me just click on Active Directory users and computers, for example. In here, you will be able to see our managed domain. This is the Azure AD managed domain or Entra Domain Service. So if you expand the domain, you will see all the organizational units. You can create your own OUs in here. You can pretty much manage it as same as if this was an on-prem Active Directory that you have in your on-premise environment. Guys, that's it for this tutorial. It's been a long one, so if you've stayed until the end, thank you very much for your time. If you're not a subscriber yet, please consider subscribing to my channel. If you've got any questions, put them in the comments below. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, take care and have a good day. Bye-bye.